This interesting Tuesday in Melbourne. Bit overcast. It was supposed to be yesterday. We've had 5 days of beautiful weather, but today's a bit muggy. Bit of a crappy day. G'day. There's my ugly face. There's my co-host down here. All of you seen him before? Isn't he beautiful? Old JJ, right next to my side as usual. Be up on his couch. He's always got to say hello to begin the program, don't you, mate? Yeah, as he say. And now we go back up on his couch. Always says hello. Going on your couch? There you go. He'll settle in there. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of Bible reads, but I got a pretty good rant today, and it's not actually coming from me, so make sure you're paying attention. Oh, he's back again. What are you up to? 28th. Evening prayer for help. We all need that. Psalm 4, 1 through 8. While the psalmist can see that some people just want God to bless them materially, he knows that trusting God brings its own reward. Answer me when I pray. O God, my defender. When I was in trouble, you helped me. Be kind to me now and hear my prayer. How long will you people insult me? How long will you love what is worthless and go after what is false? Remember that the Lord has chosen the righteous for his own, and he hears me when I call to him. Tremble with fear and stop sinning. Think deeply about this when you lie in silence on your beds. Offer the right sacrifices to the Lord and put your trust in him. Something I think we're all find difficult to do. There are many who pray, give us more blessings, O Lord. Look on us with kindness. But the joy that you have given me is more than they will ever have with all their corn and wine. When I lie down, I go to sleep in peace. You alone, O Lord, keep me perfectly safe. So there was an interesting line that I just commented on. Offer the right sacrifices to the Lord and put your trust in him. To put your trust in him sounds very simple. And God knows I've tried. But I found it a very difficult thing because life just takes over. You go to church, you have your prayer or whatever you do, and then you get into all the rigors of daily life. And before you know it, you're thinking sinful things, doing sinful things, engaging in, for example, banter on X, stuff you probably know you shouldn't do. And then the whole cycle goes over again and goes over again. And you begin to question yourself and whether you can put your trust in God. So I envy those who can do it. Being honest, I'm not too sure on why. I know I read the Bible passages here every day. I believe in Christ. I am a Christian. I probably need to look into it more, get deeper into it. Something I find difficult to do because then I've got to confront myself. So that's why I think it's difficult. So just a thought. I'm evangelizing. Now, talking of difficult to do, it is very difficult to have Christian thoughts when you have things like this. I want you to bear with me. Instead of me doing a rant today, I want to play something for you, and then I'll rant. And I think, personally, this is something that is I listened to it this morning, and it is something I find extremely alarming. Now, listen to this gentleman. He seems a very reasonable sort of guy. He's a Muslim, all right? Seems a very reasonable sort of guy, speaks very well, and normally you wouldn't have any issues with this if this was anybody else. But listen to what he has to say.
That's the largest infrastructure of today. The Muslim community is in a much better place. Are you ready to talk about the future for a couple of minutes? Okay, brothers and sisters, we have 4,000 mosques nationwide. 4,000. That's the largest infrastructure of Muslims in the United States. Many of them are like this. Nicely built by a community that's affluent, but the Muslim community, I have to be honest with you, does not have its priorities straight. And I'll be upfront with you. We spend so much on relief organizations, and we ship our money, hundreds of millions of dollars abroad. And the community here is depleted. I'm not telling you don't send money abroad. I'm saying pay attention to the needs of the Muslim community here. I'm saying save at least 30% of the money that we give relief organizations to be spent on American Muslims, and you will see why. American Muslims send almost $1 billion to the Muslim world. To do what? To deal with the impact of the destructive US foreign policy in the Muslim world. And we are giving them band-aids. We are giving them band-aids, but we are not preventing the crisis that the US is causing to the Muslim world. So if we continue this hemorrhage, we will be depleting our resources. We will not fix it over there, and we will not help the community here either. We are burning the candle on both ends. We can do much better than that, and you will see it will be more effective. And hear me out. 4,000 mosques. I hope that this mosque and the rest of the 4,000 mosques, every year, you will hold another gala. Not to raise funds for the mosque, but to raise funds for scholarship. Scholarship for the following. Each mosque should raise funds to give one scholarship for a young Muslim to study law. Another scholarship to study journalism. A third scholarship to study filmmaking. The last scholarship is history and humanities. And you will see why. 4 years from now, if you start next year,
listen to this.
2003,
Very important.
2004, 24, 25, 26, 27, in 2027, if the Muslim community nationwide does it, what will happen? You will have 4,000 young Muslim attorneys nationwide. You will have 4,000 filmmakers. You will have 4,000 journalists. And you will have 4,000 people who eventually will be professors of history in the United States. If you do it every 4 years, 15 years from now, you will have almost 15,000 Muslim journalists. You will have 15,000 Muslim lawyers. And you will have 15,000 Muslim filmmakers and professors of history. And when you talk about the image of Islam and developing policy makers and members of Congress and senators and city council members and representatives of our community, not only for ourselves but for the public, then there you go, you have it. You will have a new generation that's prepared, sponsored by the community. And you will say, how can I do that? It's very simple. Outside the mosque, have a new box called Scholarship Fund. And let people give $5 every week. And have a gala. And do one more banquet. The Muslim Achievers Banquet. The Muslim Achievers Banquet. Those who succeed and excel, celebrate them. And let them be the inspiration of the Muslim community and the world.
Now, very smart. You've got to give it to him. And this is what happens. Sorry, just got to get rid of this screen. That is actually, when you listen to it and you understand what he is talking about, that is actually quite frightening. And I'll explain to you. Oh, God, what's going on here? Sorry, they've changed my little screen thing on him. I'll go back on me. Just go on there. Stop sharing. So that there is actually quite frightening. What he is doing, he's talking about taking over the major institutions that control our legal fraternity, that control the media, that control our screens with Hollywood, and history and humanities. He wants to change how history and humanities is, it's very smart, is written and how it's taught. It's not only, he speaks later in there about, Israel and Palestine is the most important, is what he says. You can watch that for yourself. And I'll just, hold on, I'll get the page up for you again so you can go to Amy Meck. We'll share it. Come on, Amy, get up. So that's the page. And if we condense that, this was shared by Amy Meck. So at Amy Meck, you can go and explore it yourself. And as she said, they want your institutions, they want your culture, they want your government, they want you. So That's exactly what this is about. In fact, it's further than that. When people talk about culture wars, this is the ultimate culture war. They want to turn Western societies, Western countries, into Muslim countries. It's that they openly come out and say it. That's what he's saying now. Before we know it, we're going to your kid's going to go to a university and get taught by a Muslim lecturer with the Muslim spin on human history. You're going to go into a court of law where the magistrate or judge is a Muslim. Who knows? It could be Sharia law by then. Our parliaments are going to be full of Muslims. In the media, you're going to have Muslim after Muslim opining on from a Muslim perspective. So without a war being fought, without a battle being fought, without a bullet being shot, this is the conquest of Western civilized nations, and it's very smart. I'm very impressed. But we've brought this. It's not the Muslims that brought this about. It is us. It is us as Australians. We have seeded our Christian culture on this country to such a degree that our youth don't believe in it. Our youth will turn to anything to find some sort of strength in their culture, in who they are. So they've been, because of our politicians and because of us, the generations before them, who, I shared a post yesterday about Al Grasby and multiculturalism, because someone was again blaming the Jews for it. Well, that comes back onto, that was in 1973. They ended the white nations policy, which I agree with. There's others that will throw hate at me, but whatever. And then Al Grasby introduced multiculturalism. Now, our generation, I agreed with their vote on the removal of white nations policy, all right? What is it? White Australia policy, sorry, white nations. But the thing where I think they failed the most was the multiculturalism issue. We allowed that to fester. And again, what happened is the ALP introduced it, and this is what the LNP will do again. Malcolm Fraser got a massive win, 2 massive wins in a row. He could have easily repealed multiculturalism. He chose not to. And then he got Hawke in, they consolidated, and by the time Howard got in, there was no escaping it. They didn't have the political will to address that for fear of being called racist. And you get that now. Now we've got all the woke nonsense. We've got welcome to country, LGBTQI plus blah, blah, blah on steroids. We've got multiculturalism. We've got all sorts of nonsense going on. The Indigenous industry is on steroids. I mean, we had an Australian coach get hauled across hot coals by our media for something he said to 3 Indigenous players, which they'd already sorted out behind closed doors. I mean, and this nonsense, it's not, the argument goes that if you say something, it's not whether you meant to offend, it is how it is taken by the other person. Screw that. That's just ridiculous. If I offend someone, well, that's their problem. Deal with it. The only one who knows how that was supposed to be put across is me. I can't get inside someone else's mind and figure out what I'm going to say may offend them. And I'm not going to, if I didn't mean any offence, why should I apologise? All I need to do is explain what I was trying to do. But that's the smaller issue. The bigger issue that we've got is because of all this woke tolerance, we have opened the doors and let in the 5th column. Forget, everyone's talking about closing the borders and remigration and all that. Well, remigration's an easy word to say. I'm not too sure remigration is an easy thing to do. Now, if they're not here on valid visas, okay, then it's easy. But you still have the problem. You have a Muslim 5th column in this country, just like this guy, and he sounds a reasonable guy. I would actually love to interview him. But his focus, his motivation for what he just said wasn't about for the betterment of America, wasn't about for bringing people together. The key motivation for that was Palestine and degrading the influence of Israel, and some will cheer for that. Well, if you degrade the influence of Israel and everyone blows their brains out about AIPAC, for example, that guy represents the Islamic lobby group in America, which never gets talked about. And he's talked about there's 4,000 mosques. That's a lot more than the synagogues. There's a lot more Muslims in America than there are Jews. Now, personally, maybe people will disagree. I'd rather be working alongside the Jewish community than the Muslim community. The Jewish community, yeah, they've got in there, but they share our values in so many ways. And people are going, oh, they lead you, they do this and whatever. No, they just, and this guy has taken a leaf out of the Jewish community's book. He's saying, let's get our people into the best jobs, into the institutions. Let's influence. And the Jewish community, to their credit, people who resent them for this have done that. But a Christian and a Jew, overall history has shown, can live side by side, especially after World War II, but even long before that. Don't forget, Christian heritage is got it from the Jewish community. People want to sort of paint that out of history, that Christ and his apostles were Jews. That so many, nearly all the first Christians were former Jews. So many of them. So we have a clear link between the Jewish community and the Christian community. That's where a lot of people get their noses out of joint about this. I sort of understand it, about the Christian Judeo saying, but it's pretty valid. Christians and Jews, we share the Old Testament. We share the Ten Commandments. We share a lot of the prophets. People like Moses, King David, Solomon. We share them. You know, so there's a lot of belief that goes in there that all comes together. Obviously, the major difference is Jews don't accept Jesus Christ as the Messiah. You know, I mean, I'm not so, what's it called, polarizing in my views that I can't accept another faith. What polarizes me is when another faith says, we want to take over your country and change it. If they can come here and live amicably, great. But when they flood us with immigration and they want to change the face of our country, change the culture of our country, change the institutions of our country, change our laws, change everything that our country was built upon and what it represented, then yeah, that's an issue. Now, Jews, all through our history, have lived comfortably under the banner of Australian culture, heritage, law, and they've helped define it. Our greatest war general was Sir General Monash, a Jew, for example. So we've got a lot of, people don't want to hear this, but we've got a lot of common with our Jewish colleagues, friends, communities. They've never wanted to come here, for example, and change our culture, change our heritage. They were part of that culture and heritage. You can deny it all you want, but they were. Islam wasn't. And now it wants to come in here and get rid of that culture and replace it with something else. And this is the way they're going about it. If we don't start uniting and doing something to counter this, they will succeed. And unfortunately, our media will make excuses for this. Hollywood will make excuses for this. Not only will they make excuses, they'll kowtow to this. They'll kiss their asses. So I don't know the cure, but I do know one important step that I think is true, is what I said at the start of this, is I think many good-willed Australians have got to start returning to Christianity. Even if you think you're an atheist, I think you need to, for the sake of your country, your heritage and whatever, start embracing it a bit more. For no other reason that you want to preserve what Australia, what our parents built, what our grandparents built. We don't want Tony Burke's Australia. He's saying people like that can come here and don't have to assimilate. So, you know, in 25 years, but going by that way, that guy's maths was wrong. He said every 4 years. Well, if you're having a scholarship for a person to go get their degree or get in the media or whatever, and it takes you 4 years to get the first one, well, those scholarship funds will keep coming in, and you'll keep producing 4,000 of those people every year in each of those things. So that he identified 4 areas. So that's 16,000 Muslims every year getting into those institutions and professions and all that sort of thing. Think about that over 10 years. That's 140,000 people. It's very smart. What he said was very, very smart. But there's nothing, for example, stopping Christians doing exactly the same thing. To do that, you got to go back to church and you got to give some of your income towards those church for those scholarships to make sure your Christian heritage doesn't get diluted by someone else who is prepared to do that. I'm not too sure we've got the intestinal fortitude or desire to do that. But, I mean, the right can't even... Like, I'm hoping to have Scott Challen again, and he's doing a great job. But if I'm telling the truth, he'll pump up the tyres of that 500 people there were there at Canberra. I will say it's disappointing. And if I get Scott Challen on the show, I'd be surprised if he doesn't ultimately admit, it's not what we wanted, Bob. Of course you would want 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 25,000 people there. I mean, he got 500 in Canberra. There was, the day before, there was 95,000 at the footy. So we are still, we're still turning a blind eye. We're still turning the cheek to what's happening in our own backyard. What that guy said in America, you can bet your bottom dollar that will get, if it's not already being spoken about here in Australia, it will get taken on board and start happening here in Australia as well. It already is. It already is. So, so remigration is a very hard thing. So let's say, you got to beat Albo, then you got to get for example, to get remigration happen in our current state legally, you've got to win an election, you've got to be able to pass legislation through the lower house and then the upper house, and then you've got to get that legislation in place and get the forces in place. So whether it's the ASIO, Australian Federal Police or whatever, to go about the task of remigration. That's not an easy task, and especially if the figures that are being bandied around, and I have no idea what they're true. I'm going to, again, ask Scott. He says there's 2 million people here not on an Australian visa. Well, can you break those numbers down a bit? Because that's what's going to have to happen. And then you're going to have to start knocking on doors like the ICE agents did in the USA, and you've got to start kicking people out of the country. Now, if you've got people that have been here in 4 years and are in the process of getting their citizenship, and they're Islamic, and they've studied law, and they've become a lawyer, and they've got a job, you're going to be able to actually legitimately kick that person out of the country? I'm not too sure. It sounds a wonderful policy, but I think there's a lot of intricacies inside that policy that's going to make it extremely difficult. Is it too late? Have we opened the door to such an extent it can't be reversed? I'm hoping that's not the case. Sadly, my gut's screaming at me it possibly could be. So, sadly, for the young ones, it's probably not going to impact us older ones so much. But the alarm bell should have been ringing a while ago. And this is not even so much the Boomish generation's fault. All the stuff that happened with Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan that led to, and I had this argument from Ben the other day, well, because we went into Iraq, we opened the doors to immigration. No, we didn't. That took the politicians to say, yeah, we've done something wrong, we've got to open the doors to immigration. We could have let, as Ben rightly pointed out, those doors shut, except for certain cases. Germany didn't have to open the doors to mass immigration from the Middle East. We didn't have to open the doors to mass immigration from the Middle East. We willingly did that. And and I don't blame any generation, but if you're going to, that is the voting public between 2000 and now. That's after the boomers. If you had to put that to the boomers in 1973 or even the 80s, it would have been a flat out no. But let's be honest, none of us, the boomers, Gen X, the Zoomers, we've never had a say in it. We've never had a say in it, except for maybe in 2013 when Abbott won, and I think you can legitimately say that was probably the one of the last elections, whether maybe 2019, possibly, I don't think so, but 2013 is probably one of the last elections the boomers had a real influence on. And, we voted to shut the border, and Abbott shut the border. Rudd came in and reopened it, and they've been open ever since. Turnbull didn't do much, and Abbott wasn't in long enough. Abbott shut the border, but then it got reopened under, no doubt, under Turnbull, because he's just like Rudd, he's a twin. So, politician after politician. Morrison is supposed to be the border czar at some stage. Did he keep the border shut? I'm not too sure. He did during COVID. Maybe we needed 5 more years of COVID. Who knows? But it's all nuts. I had our Labor mate, Ash, getting on board, trying to say how all the figures have been fudged on immigration. Listen, Ash, I don't need figures. I live in Melbourne. I've done so for 40 years. And I've seen them. I get out. In my job, I get out to schools. I get out to businesses. I get out to suburbs, all across eastern Melbourne, not so much west. I steer clear of western Melbourne, thank you very much. I've been there a couple of times. I don't like what I see. But in the eastern suburbs, and you're talking about what used to be blue ribbon Liberal seats, they have changed dramatically. Immigration has had an impact. Go to a rental inspection and see how many people of immigrant heritage are going to those rental inspections. Go to an auction and see how many people of immigrant heritage go there. Now, I'm not against immigration, but I am against immigration when it overwhelms the current society. And that's what we're going through now. And I'm not too sure it's reversible. No, I'm really not. I'd love to have someone come in and tell me how it is. But, for example, if those people are going to re-migrate and there's 2 million of them, and then be another at least 2 to 3 million of them behind them that said, no, we're not going anywhere, what goes on then? And trust me, they'll organise. As this guy just showed just then, they will get organised. Respect that. They will get organised. As those 2 guys in Bondi showed, they'll get their hands on weapons. What happens then? We all know what happens then. We don't want to say it. We know what happens then. So we're in such a delicate position. It really is. And I want it pushed back. Don't get me wrong. If you can find a re-migration policy that is fair, that is balanced, and will work, and re-establish our culture as an Anglo-European Christian nation that welcomes people that will assimilate and embed themselves in that culture, I'm all for it. How do we get there? That's the interesting question. And you can hear all these wonderful theories, and I've heard policies from politicians my entire life. What they promise and what you get can be it's like going to the moon and going to the moon and back. That's how much separation there can be from the two, especially if you've got a volatile upper house and you've got to dilute your legislation to get it through. Now, people call that democracy. I call it bullshit. You go to the people, you put a policy forward, it gets voted on, it's accepted, it should go through, and then in 3 years have another election and the people can judge it. I'm not a big fan of the upper house. Got to say, a government gets elected on policy, let them govern. Even if you disagree with the policy, because you can then kick them out at the next election. We don't need the upper house, and Queensland don't have it, and they're fine. So why do we need it? All the upper house does is get us idiots like Lydia Thorpe, that Payman girl, bloody Sarah Stupid Young, and there's that other one, the Pakistani fat woman. You know, we get those ones in the upper house upsetting the apple cart, because you got to go through them to get your legislation through. That's what we're dealing with. And that's why I argue we need a new constitution, and we need to become a republic. And people say, well, you can't say that, you're a conservative. Well, there's conservatives in America. They're Republican. All right? The Conservative Party in America is named the Republican Party. So you can be a Republican and a conservative. And in fact, a republic from a conservative perspective would be very powerful, but all our conservatives in this, oh no, we can't go there. We've got to remain embedded to King Charles, you know, one of the biggest leftists on the planet. You know, the monarchy is dead. The monarchy, it's still there, but the monarchy as we knew it is gone. It's gone. It died with Queen Elizabeth. She was the last link to the traditional monarchists that have sat on that throne for hundreds of years. King Charles is nothing like his mother. He's nothing like King Edward. He's nothing like Queen Victoria. He's nothing like those. So the monarchy's dead. We don't need the monarchy, but we do need a conservative republic. And we need to change our democracy where it's fairer, it's more balanced, and it represents the will of the people better. It doesn't give And this is where I had Malcolm Roberts on. We had a great discussion. The one thing we'll disagree is the preferential system, where some people get 4 bites of the cherry and some people get 1. That is not representative democracy. That's giving more power to people who just happen to remain in the hat after preferences. Study your preference system. Most people don't understand it. That's not democracy. So, and first past the post, for all its flaws, and it does have some, but not as many as the preferential system. First past the post at least will give the person with the most votes the chance to put in their policy. So anyway, now if we don't get that right, guys like that in America are going to bring that to Australia, and we're just going to lose our country in the quiet of night. It'll be gone in 15 years. It'll happen a lot quicker than what that guy said. So we do something about it, we find the solutions, or we lose our country. It's that simple. And that process has already started. You got to listen to that, and if you don't understand it, listen to it again, because it's coming to our shores. It's probably already here, and if we're not smart, our country's gone. It's gone. So anyway, that's my thought for the day. That's my rant. God bless you. God bless your kids. God bless your grandkids. God bless your pets. Isn't he beautiful? Please, God bless that country. And I'll see you later on. Bye for now.